All right, here with reaction, former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker, along with the author of the bestseller, Trial of the Century, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, author of another bestseller, Get Trump, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. Matt Whitaker, let me start with you. You have the background, the inner workings of the Department of Justice. You explain to me, so if Merrick Garland testified under oath that Weiss had all this authority, and didn't need special counsel status because he had more authority, and he was denied on two separate occasions the ability to go after his investigation. That sounds to me like Merrick Garland not only was helping to protect his boss, Joe Biden, but also lied under oath, and that would be perjury based on my understanding of the law.
Yeah, it would be, Sean. Good to be with you tonight. But I also know how the Department of Justice works, and Merrick Garland is being kept in the dark by a lot of this. He's not communicating with these U.S. attorneys in Los Angeles and the District of Columbia who are doing his dirty work. Plus, the Deputy Attorney General, who has day-to-day oversight of those offices, certainly is trying to keep things out of Merrick Garland's office. And I would also, not only would I bring those U.S. attorneys in front of Congress after they bring the 6 witnesses, I would also bring the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the tax division, who would have had to have approved or be involved in these cases, because all of those people know a bit and a piece here. But at the end of the day, Merrick Garland was not honest with the American people, and we need the truth in this case because it just smells really bad.
All right, Professor Dershowitz, let me get to you in this case. Now, we have 6 people in real time taking contemporaneous notes. They are corroborating that Weiss is rightly complaining that he did not have the authority to follow through on prosecutions or charges that he wanted to bring in the investigation as it relates to Hunter and Joe Biden. That authority that Merrick Garland said he had did not exist. How important, how critical will the testimony of those 6 whistleblowers and their notes be in terms of ascertaining the truth here?
Well, very important. And the judge who is sentencing Hunter Biden and who has to approve of the plea deal must call Garland, must call Weiss, must call these 6 witnesses, and must say, look, Hunter Biden's lawyers, we know you want the deal to go through. Justice Department, we know you want the deal to go through, but I'm a judge. I represent the people of the United States of America. I want to make sure.
Professor, who has standing? Who's going to bring that before that judge? Will the judge do it on their own?
An organization like Judicial Watch, an organization that can come in amicus curiae and say, look, we can't leave it to the 2 parties here. They're both interested in preventing the whole truth from coming out. So Judicial Watch or some other organization comes in and says, we represent the people of this country. You have to call these people as witnesses. The law provides that a judge need not accept a plea bargain agreed to by both sides if there is a problem here. And if he concludes, for example, that Weiss was denied the ability to investigate beyond Delaware, then the deal's off, because the deal probably ends any possibility of prosecution in the District of Columbia or in Los Angeles. And if those were foreclosed in violation of what Garland said would be available to Weiss, then the deal's off. And you have to go back to square one. You have to conclude the investigation, and then you decide whether or not to make a plea bargain. Right now, the judge should not accept this plea bargain without hearing from Garland, Weiss, and the 6 witnesses.
I completely agree. Well said. Greg Jarrett, let me take it at you in a different direction. Let's talk about the WhatsApp messages that we now have from Zero Experience Hunter. I'm sitting here with my father. We want to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled, blah, blah, blah. By the way, just so you know, I will make certain between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge that you will regret not following my direction. That's WhatsApp message number 1, an encrypted application. WhatsApp message number 2, the Bidens are the best I know at doing exactly what the chairman wants from the partnership. Can you explain what it is the Bidens do so well, and what could they possibly offer a Chinese energy company? Because I'm having a hard time figuring that one out. I don't know. I'm not that smart.
Well, it's the selling out of America for profit. It's the equivalent of a crime syndicate. All the more important that I agree with the professor that the judge, Mary Ellen Noriega, put a halt to this, put a pause on this plea deal, because the evidence is compelling that Merrick Garland has been lying when he denied that 2 U.S. attorneys appointed by Joe Biden halted felony charges against his son. Garland may have further perjured himself when he claimed that Weiss had ultimate authority to charge anywhere and that he never asked for special counsel status. All of those statements are contradicted, not just by Gary Shapley, the IRS special agent, but a second IRS whistleblower has come forward. There are other witnesses, as you point out in that pivotal meeting. They were sitting there, they heard David Weiss confess he had no power to prosecute anymore. And Shapley took contemporaneous notes. He summarized it in an email. He sent it out to everybody, and an FBI agent, Darrell Walden, corroborated it by replying to the email saying, "Thank you, Gary, you covered it all." So the question is, are all of those people lying, or is Merrick Garland, and maybe Weiss is lying too, because he told Congress he had authority, but read the rest of Weiss's statement. There's a critical caveat. I have it in front of me here. Authority consistent with the principles of federal prosecution and department regulations. Well, what's that? Look it up. I did look it up, and the DOJ regulations state clearly that a guy like Weiss has no authority outside his Delaware district. So the federal judge, Noriega, should delay approving this crooked plea deal. It reeks of political interference, corruption, lies, and a cover-up, Sean.
You know, Matt, the whistleblower in an interview tonight said, first of all, he's talking about $2.2 million in owed taxes. And I know later some rich benefactor paid it, a quote, loan. I don't know how Hunter's going to pay it back. But he said the president's son, he believed, received preferential treatment and claims he was blocked from pursuing leads that would have led to Joe Biden, the president of the United States, and that the DOJ and Biden's attorney deny special treatment doesn't mean a thing to me. When you have not one but 6 whistleblowers, they impeached Donald Trump over a hearsay whistleblower. So I've got to imagine that if this judge goes along with that plea deal, that sweetheart slap on the wrist deal, no jail time for Hunter, that too is corrupt in and of itself. Am I wrong?
Well, it will be, because this judge needs to find out exactly if this is in the interest of justice, which we've talked about it's not. And, you know, you talk about this whistleblower tonight going on and describing exactly how much in back taxes Hunter not only avoided, but the responsibility he avoided by not only paying them by this loan, but also having the statute of limitations run on the 2 biggest years when he got the Burisma money, where he was making $83,000 a month, so $1 million a year. You know, all of that has passed now, and he's facing very inconsequential misdemeanor charges for tax years where he didn't make big Burisma money.
All right, exit question, yes or no, guys? I'm just up on the clock. Professor Dershowitz, if all this turns out to be true, would the Republicans be right to impeach Merrick Garland?
It's a hard sell, because impeachment requires a crime. It requires perjury, and perjury requires a specific intent. I'd rather move to trying to find out the truth first rather than trying to prosecute people.
If Merrick Garland said he had authority that he knew he didn't have and wouldn't give him the authority, the special counsel status he asked for, is that enough to raise that bar for you?
I think so, because he has the authority. Garland has the authority.
Exactly.
To allow to go
and he
outside
claimed that
the
he had
district.
more power as an attorney. That's not true.
But there may have been underlings that undercut his views.
All right.
I'm not prepared to go to perjury. I'm prepared, however, to say we must have hearings, and you can't allow this plea bargain to go
right,
forward
I gotta roll.
without these.
If that's all true, should he be impeached? Last word, Greg Jarrett.
If he knowingly and intentionally lied, then Garland should be impeached, because perjury would constitute a high crime and misdemeanor.
Thank you all. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.